Our guest today is a 30-year veteran at WBAL-TV here in Baltimore. He was a recipient of the 2006 National Headliner Award and Regional Emmy Award for his piece Africa's Maryland, as well as an Associated Press Award for an undercover investigative report on discriminatory practices in private clubs in West Virginia. He can now be seen giving the education report during the 5 and 6 p.m. news while also being a pastor at his church on Sunday mornings. A professor at Loyola for 16 years and my personal friend, Dr. Tim Tooten. Thank you for being here, Dr. Tooten.
Man, you know a lot about me, don't you?
Hey, you know what? You left your bio out there for me to read online, you know?
It's a pleasure being here and to be on your show.
Well, it's a pleasure having you. So I want to get started with something a little bit more personal. You grew up in Live Oak, Florida. What really made you want to get into broadcasting? You
know, it's funny because Live Oak is so small that everybody knows everybody. I used to listen to the radio in my early years, and they were small units. And I was drawn to the announcers. I really got a kick out of these guys who were giving the weather and the news, and so I would begin to imitate them. And so in my imitating them, when I got to class, 3rd, 4th grade, I would do it in the back of the room. Some friends of mine told me recently, you would take a pencil and a paper. So I just somehow was intrigued by the voices on the radio and thought that I could do it. And so I just got drawn, not knowing that it was broadcasting. I just loved the announcers.
Mm-hmm. Now, I didn't know this before we started this show. You just told me that you started in sports. So what made you really want to transition from sports to news? Did you want to transition from sports to news? What was that?
What happened was every young man's dream was to be a great sports star. I wasn't that great. So if we went to the local court and I didn't get picked, I would announce the game. And so I would say, there's Johnson with 2 shots, he's up, and it's good. And so when I started doing that through high school, when I got to college, I did an internship, and the internship was for sports, well, actually news. And so I ended up having to not do sports, but do news. And that worked out well. So basically, I never looked back. ESPN was just starting out, and even though I did all sports in college, I wouldn't tell them that, oh, I'm not doing this, it's not sports. So I ended up doing news and became kind of a news guy my last year of college.
Okay, and was your first job in D.C.?
My first real job, paying job, was actually in Washington. And let me tell you how that transpired. I was a senior at Florida State and didn't have much going on. I tell students all the time, it just happened. I didn't have anything going on. I had little tapes together, like some of the students have now. It wasn't that great. And a professor of mine said, there's a program in Washington that I think you ought to check out. And I knew I was already good. I had a tape. Why go to D.C.? I was going to be the next, evening news anchor.
Right.
I took his advice, took a long Greyhound bus ride to D.C., and it was a one-year program. And they picked 3 people. And I so impressed them, I think, because I thought I was that good, that they held me around and said, you're the guy from Florida who knows everything. While you're here, let's see your tape. And they watched my little tape and said, man, you need a lot of work. And so I did come to D.C. on a 1-year really internship, and they did pay me. And so from there it was to West Virginia.
Okay. Well, that's where you won the big award that I said in the beginning of the show anyway. So I was wondering so you went D.C., West Virginia. Your next stop is in Baltimore, right?
Yes. I came with Channel 2, actually.
Really?
And I was with them for a year and a half. And this happens in the business. They didn't renew my contract. Okay. And so I was out of work.
Okay.
And so I sold insurance for a year. And WBAL picked me up as a freelancer. And that was in '88. And so next year will be 30 years.
That's pretty cool. So then they signed you on as just a freelance reporter. When did they make you the education reporter?
That's a great story because I did general assignments. I would do shootings and fires and you name it. And the head of the company said, we're doing a special few weeks of education service. We think you'd be a good guy for it. I was like, okay. I had 2 kids at the time, so I was really interested in school. And so I started going out and doing schools around the region. And once the campaign ended, I said, you know what? I like this beat. So I'd made contacts along the way. And at some point, without them telling me, I kind of made myself the education reporter. And so I just kind of landed there and got to know all the people in the different areas around Baltimore and established contacts. And so that's how it kind of happened.
So then would you say that being the education reporter kind of led to your job here at Loyola and teaching the students here for the last 16 years?
I remember the day when one of my colleagues, who's still at WBAL, called me and said, Tim, Loyola's looking for a professor. I was like, I'm not a professor. He said, listen, I was in a program for a visiting professor, and they need someone. I said, well, why me? I don't have a master's degree. And I didn't at the time. And I came over to see one of the professors. He says, okay, you want to start? And with anything in life, you may not totally be prepared for it, but you give it a shot. And there are a lot of alumni from Loyola some of them are in bigger markets than I am. They're doing very well, and I'm very proud of their lives have been touched by professors along with even with Mr. Dunmore, Professor Dunmore. So there are many along the way who've come through this program, and I think that it's going to be many more, including yourself will be one of those persons.
Well, you have somehow some free time when you're not teaching or working at WBAL, and you started the Harvest Christian Ministries Church. It's a non-denominational one down in Baltimore. So what drove you to make that, and what drives you to just keep it going, too?
Life has many turns, and so I was fine being, on the air, and I joined a church in the area, and somehow it came up that one guy was taking a seminary course. I'm taking seminary at St. Mary's.
Okay.
I said, I'm going to take one. And so I took a course in the master's program, and about midway, I sensed, wow, I think I feel an urge to preach, and so I received the call to preach. And I continued to go to school, and I thought it would be traditional that you would, while you wasn't, not doing broadcasting, but you would basically get a church. And I didn't think I'd be a pastor. And so we started our own church, just out of like, hey, we can do this. And that was 11 years ago. So that was something that it was divine. And much like much of life, you don't know where it's going to go. And people will tell you they had all this great plan that I knew in Florida had a great plan. I didn't have a great plan. Things, they really worked out. And so to see myself as a pastor now, I said to Charles, one of our head deacons, I said, who would have thought that in D.C. in 80 that we'd be doing this? And we both went, nobody. So we didn't think it would come to this, but it's a great balance, and I really enjoy doing it.
So then my last question for you, wrap it up real quick. What would be your advice for anyone that's sitting in the same seat that I am right now or that you were back when you were still in college? What would be your advice for these students going forward?
Just keep doing it. I think that you have equipment now, learn everything. I think having the value of saying, I'm not just someone who can't carry a tripod. I can carry a tripod. I can get you a coffee. I can edit. So learn all you can. And the attitude is so important. You have a great attitude. Students I've met in this program are genuinely people who are, who want to learn. And nobody knows what break you're going to get. And nobody could have told me I would have been in Baltimore for almost 30 years. No one would have told me that I would have gone beyond my little small radio station that was 1,000 watts as the local DJ. I was cool with that. I figured one day I could become but I never did worry about it. And so when doors open up and you meet good people and they'll cross your path, just keep being hungry. Just have that passion. There's something called fire in the belly, that you eat and you dream and you live this stuff. And people you come in contact with will see that you're not just some person who says, I want to go on TV or I want to go on radio, but I really like this. And tell them, so I really like this. I think it goes a long way.
You can catch Dr. Tooten at either Harvest Christian Ministries, his church downtown, it's off Bel Air Road, right?
It's right in the Overley community of Baltimore. So
you can catch him there, or you can turn on your TVs, Channel 11, WBAL-TV 11 News. You can catch him there in the 5, 5:30, or 6 p.m. news. Dr. Tooten, thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate it.